ดี๋ยวเราเริ่มต้นกับท่านแรกเลยแล้วกันนะฮะ Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome computer graphic supervisor from Hollywood, head of school CG Pro, Mr. Edward Dawson Taylor from US. Please make a round of applause. ปรบมือหน่อยครับ Please welcome. สวัสดีครับ Enjoy.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Sawadee krap. So, my name's Ed Dawson Taylor, and firstly, I'd just like to say it's a real pleasure to be here. It's been a while since I've been in Thailand, about probably 15 years or so, but it's great to be back. And I also want to say a huge thank you to Unformat and to Tu, especially for inviting me, and for the whole team for bringing me over. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you all for being here as well. Thanks for taking the time to come and learn a little bit about virtual production. So let's get started. Just a quick overview of what I'm going to go through today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about myself, and then a little bit about the history of production and how virtual production came about. We'll talk about the possibilities in virtual production, all the different kinds of virtual production that there are. We'll talk about the pipeline, especially the content pipeline, and also the stage operations and all of the tech that goes together to put this kind of show on. We'll talk about roles, jobs, and skills, and what it takes to work in virtual production, and a little bit about new media, because there's some new forms of media being born out of all of this as things come together. Different past industries are colliding to create this, and there's some new things being born out of that as well. And then I'll take some questions at the end. So, yeah, here we go. So, as I said, my name is Ed Dawson Taylor. I have been originally I was a software engineer, and then I became a visual effects artist about 16-ish years ago. I had the privilege of working at places like ILM and MPC and Digital Domain. Worked on some awesome movies, some of which were a childhood dream of mine, things like Jurassic World, and I got to work on Lion King. And I've been a teacher for a while and love teaching, and that's led to starting a school, which at the beginning of the pandemic had another business go away, essentially, and then the school was born in that moment. It freed me up to be able to do that. So thank you, pandemic, for that gift of being able to start CG Pro. I'm going to take a minute just to talk about myself a little bit more, not because I like talking about myself, but I think it's interesting talking about how I got here, just because I think a lot of people wonder about how do you get to work on stuff like this, and I can hopefully shed some light on that just by talking about how I got here personally. So, button. There's a picture of me playing the saxophone. That's a little bit about how I got here. So essentially some early experiments, being in love with computers since I was a kid, getting introduced to some really old machines that make me feel old just looking at them, being into comics and art and music and all kinds of different things, really experimenting, trying to figure out what I liked at that point in my childhood. I then saw some movies. I had an extra mum growing up, and she was very into movies and introduced me to some of these movies, which started to use computer graphics in early things like Tron and Last Starfighter. It was really Jurassic Park that lit up a lot of people's careers, I think. But watching that movie changed my life. It was really looking at, especially that dinosaur. The moment that happened in the movie, I thought, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do with my life. So I bought a book about how they made it, and I read it every day, and I figured out I have to go to ILM, and I have to work with Dennis Muren and all of these things that I needed to do. But I was 14 years old in the wrong country with no work permit, no skills, and it was a very long way away from me at that point. So But I got into computers and art from an early age. That was kind of what I dreamed it being like. The reality was a little different. But very into computers, programming. In the early days, it was really making computer graphics required programming. There was no software to make it, so you had to write code to make computer graphics. So I started dabbling in that. And then flash forwards quite a long way, I became a VJ, which is interestingly kind of how virtual production arrived, was the confluence of film and live events and people doing visuals at events. So a little part of my history was spent in nightclubs in London, partly because I just liked going to clubs, but also it was a great place to put art in front of people and experiment and just make things and have a place to show them. It was like a weird kind of art gallery almost. That evolved. I loved stories and I wanted to tell stories, and VJing was not a great way of telling stories. So we evolved as a group of frustrated VJs into a group called the Sancho Plan, and it became a show that was our own, and we toured it all over the world, came close to Thailand. We did a show in Singapore, but this was in Madrid. We did installations and built shows and toured around the world for a while. It was super fun and a great way of just exploring computer graphics. I realized it was an obsession, and I didn't have I was a software engineer and I was doing this in my spare time, and I realized if I wanted a life, well, this was the dream anyway, that I wanted a life, so I thought if I got a job in it, then I'd be able to also have a life. Didn't really turn out entirely that way, because I found I just filled my working time with it and my spare time with it. But I studied, I went back to school, I did some adult education, if you like, very similar to what we do now at CG Pro. And my first job was on that movie, on Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, which made me feel like, yeah, I made it. And I actually didn't really enjoy working on it very much because of the type of work I was doing. It was very specialized, very niche. And I realized I was a generalist. I wanted to do all sorts of different things. So I went to commercials for probably 6 or 7 years. Commercials and music videos. And music videos are some of my most fun things to make. And virtual production is very good for music videos, as it turns out. This was a music video I worked on for one of my favorite musicians, actually. I made the octopus and did all the modeling and rigging and got really into all of that. It's very technical, very nerdy, but tremendous fun if you like that kind of thing. So spent a while in commercials, and then met a girl in a pub in London, and I liked her a lot. So we moved. She was from America. It's my wife, Jackie. She dragged me back to America, and we've been there for 12 years. I did a lot of commercials there and TV, and a little bit more Harry Potter influence there, because Harry Potter is the reason I love that little wizard. He's the reason why my wife came to London to work on the last Harry Potter movie. So I have a lot to thank Mr. Harry Potter. So I was working in America for a while, working in visual effects, in traditional visual effects, if you like. And I was at Digital Domain, working on a commercial, and they were hiring for Jungle Book. And a lot of people in visual effects were kind of like a bit confused about what they were doing and thought it was going to be a Disney remake, didn't know if it would be successful. It was also this new way of doing things, which I don't know if it was really being called virtual production then, but it was still previs. It was kind of live previs, was how it was pitched to me. I thought it sounded like a good thing to try, and so I did. And I took a risk on it, jumped in and worked with these characters. There's my old supervisor, April, and some of the people on set, little Mowgli there, and me, dressed as Edward Scissorhands on Halloween, which is a kind of tradition in the US. You have to dress up. So there's me looking silly, working in the virtual art department on Jungle Book. And that was like blue screen. It was still tracked cameras. It was like the beginning part of being able to show computer graphics and live action in the same kind of time, but it wasn't an LED wall. It was just using composited computer graphics, like the traditional visual effects, essentially, but in real time for previs. Next, well, I'm missing a whole bunch of things in talking about this, but I want to talk about myself for an entire hour. So Jurassic World was a big one for me. That was a childhood dream. As it says there, I applied to ILM 6 or more times, maybe more, and rejected all of those times, except finally when they let me through the door to work on Jurassic World. And because Jurassic Park was my childhood dream, this was the childhood dream coming true, and it was awesome. It was very hard, but very awesome. I had to learn their own software in 2 days and start doing shots. So then The Lion King really was kind of building on top of what Jungle Book was. This time, though, there was no live action, except the very first shot in the movie. But it was still considered virtual production, and the reason is because there was still a volume, the camera was being tracked, and the previs was essentially what we were making, but it was being shot by a traditional film crew. So the guys you can see here, there's real live action DPs and real camera equipment, real tracks, dollies, cranes, all the equipment was real, but we rigged it up to be able to puppeteer a camera in the virtual world. And the camera in the virtual world is called a virtual camera, if you like, or VCam. But yeah, got to work in that room there. I may even be in the background of that shot, I'm not sure. But there's Jon Favreau and Rob Legato and Caleb Deschanel, and I think Andy in the background, the animation supervisor. So director of photography, all in VR, all looking at the virtual world being adjusted and being shot and putting cameras in there. And there's me looking silly again. I couldn't help myself. I had to throw that one in. Halloween again, Beetlejuice this time. But I put that there just to remind myself and everybody that this should be fun. It gets very technical. There's lots of challenges, but it should be fun doing this stuff. I also did a bunch of other stuff. I worked on an autonomous electric race car championship, if anyone has ever seen one of those. There's only been a couple of them. But this was real Formula One size race cars racing around a track, using a lot of the same technology, using tracking the car, tracking the cameras, and putting an augmented reality layer on top of a real race, real cars, $1 million each, tremendous fun, and nothing to do with film. Then flashed through a bunch of other things that I did. Entrepreneurship and teaching kind of came together at the start of the pandemic. I'd already started 3 other companies at that point, did variously well or not so well. And CG Pro was born at the beginning of the pandemic thanks to the death of another venture, and been doing great ever since. It's been 3 years that CG Pro has been around, and in 3 short years, we became a premier Unreal Authorized Training Center, which is one of only 5 on planet Earth, and I'm extremely proud of saying that. So there's a little bit about me. Again, I told that story because the evolution of computer graphics is involved. It's not about me, it's about the story of how this stuff came about. And if I could sum it up, I would say, how did I get here? Determination, I think, is it, because there's been so many challenges and so many times where I've just felt like I can't figure this out, or I want to give up, or whatever. Working very hard, following my own intuition. There's been times where all my friends are going this way and I went this way. You have to take a few risks. You have to not give up. And you have to be comfortable with uncertainty and change. And as it says there, most of it was perspiration as opposed to inspiration. But at the beginning, a good healthy dose of inspiration as well. And a quote there from Ronnie Coleman: "Everybody wants to be a bodybuilder, but don't nobody want to lift no heavy ass weight." I certainly don't, but there are times in computer graphics where it is a weight that you have to lift, and it's hard, and you have to keep going. And I'm sure everybody that works in virtual production would say the same thing. So, quick history of virtual production. It's not been around for that long, so it won't take me long to get through it. As it says, spoiler alert, none of it is really new. None of this stuff is really new. evolved from things that have been around for more than 100 years, going back from rear projection all the way up to big LED volumes that we got now. So it's really a combination of things like rear projection, or not projection in this case, it's screens, visual effects, gaming tech, art department, traditional things, regular production, post-production, mocap, real-time tracking, real-time compositing. All these things had to come together at the right moment and have people that were willing to take a risk, again, to talk about that. You know, Jon Favreau, my old boss, was willing to do that and convinced people to put hundreds of $millions behind it as well. So anyway, little quick timeline of production history or effects history, going back all the way to before the 1900s. The evolution of practical effects goes back really, really long way, all the way back, 130 years or however long that is. Rear projection starting to appear with those kind of car shots that you're probably all familiar with, going through rear projection, lots of innovation in terms of practical effects and miniatures from Mr. Ray Harryhausen. He really pioneered that. There were lots of that fed into Star Wars, and how Star Wars did a lot of it was miniatures using motion control. There was a motion control camera here yesterday, but it's not there right now. Maybe it's outside. Motion control, miniatures, all evolved into George Lucas having a dream to push the envelope and make everything digital. So that was a massive transition in the world of effects, and moving into digital editing, cameras, and visual effects was a huge revolution. There was lots of frustration, there was lots of challenges, there was a lot of people being angry and resisting change. But change came anyway, and I think that's a good preface to talking about this. This change is here. It's not coming, it's here. So thinking back to other times when there was big revolutions, it helps to think that the best thing to do is to move with it, learn about it, and get into it, rather than resist it, fight it, pretend it's not there. All the AI stuff that's happening now as well is going to be the same, whether you like it or not. No, moral debate aside, it is here, it's going to keep progressing. My opinion, the best thing to do is learn how to tame it with all of this stuff. So, and then, yeah, going through the little history of digital visual effects, back from early digital cameras through George Lucas and his digital team becoming Pixar and kind of breaking off and doing their thing, getting into previs, early CG previs for movies like Jurassic Park. Virtual cameras starting to appear where you're taking a physical object and making a virtual camera move based on its movement. Early examples of that I remember seeing on behind the scenes for Lord of the Rings. That was a huge inspiration for me to want to get into computer graphics. And I remember the behind the scenes of their VCam, and it's amazing how long ago that was, back to 2001, and seeing virtual cameras really only be talked about from the last few years. So very pioneering work there. James Cameron took that to the next level with the Avatar series, but all within Motion Builder and using the virtual camera to steer cameras and characters around in Avatar. Then all that crew was basically the crew that jumped over into Jungle Book, and those are the people I worked with on Jungle Book. That was, I realized I was part of something that had already been around for a little bit, although it wasn't talked about that much. As Jungle Book came out, people started to talk about the use of game engines, because that was really the first time where we started to use game engines. It was Unity. We started to use a game engine instead of just the Motion Builder, because game engine could look much nicer, and the Motion Builder was fairly limited in terms of look. So that was the emergence of game engines, and then really Lion King was where we still had Motion Builder on Jungle Book. It was Motion Builder driving Unity, driving Photon, which was the renderer. But Lion King took all of that stuff out of the way, just used Unity, and really invented a lot of the tools that now exist in Unreal Engine on that movie. And it was a very, very pioneering movie, and a real honor to be a part of it. Lots of fun, lots of challenges. LED walls, obviously The Mandalorian. You guys heard of The Mandalorian? I did not work on that project, but that was what brought attention to the LED volume. And then, yeah, now I guess we're looking at the future of this, machine learning coming in and not taking everyone's jobs, in my opinion, but just augmenting processes, making them more efficient. There's the whole generative art side of it, but really machine learning is really helping empower artists as well on the other side of it. So we'll see where that goes. I'm not the type to predict the future, so I'm not gonna do that today. So virtual production, and the first thing I want to say about virtual production is that there are many flavors of it, and there's many uses of virtual production. It's an umbrella term that explains a lot of different types of work. The LED volume is the one that gets all the attention. It makes sense. They're very cool. They're highly useful, and they look very cool. But there's all these other kinds of virtual production, like some of the movies I got to work on, which are really more pre-visualizing a movie that's then rendered using traditional visual effects techniques. And now, as the game engines at the time of Jungle Book, they looked pretty good, but they still weren't amazing. But now Unreal Engine has got to this point where it's becoming really photoreal, so we're now able to make the previs and the final imagery in it. And it's really, really starting to take shape and evolve. So in terms of virtual production, what that means to me is, yes, the LED volume, but really it's the combination of the use of many different real-time techniques. And the real-time techniques include game engines, the use of tracking, whether that's, we'll talk about some different types of tracking in a second, but tracking to track characters moving around, cameras moving around, all of that's happening in real time, and real-time collaboration. But the real-time render speeds is the thing that I think gets all the attention in virtual production. But real-time collaboration, where teams can work together in real time, that's the part where it gets really fun to me. And what I've seen it do and transform the workflow is it's really woken the whole thing up, and it's allowed visual effects people to be on set more, and it's allowed filmmakers and visual effects people to communicate with each other and directly in real time and make decisions and work together, rather than the previous way, which was we'll do a little bit of work here, chuck it over the fence, post it to the next person, they'll do something and it'll move forward. These people don't really talk to each other. If they need to do something, they kick it back through a producer all the way over here. It's very disconnected. It's very linear, but it's very disconnected. And this world of being able to work in real time allows all those people to play at the same time. And there's huge benefits to that. We'll talk about in a second. So there is different types. There are more, but if you could lump them into these terms, doing virtual camera, like the Lion King work that we did, it was really a big mocap volume. We were trying to capture the position of a camera. If you simplify the entire thing that we were doing there. Previs is really visualizing what a thing is going to look like before you make it. Save tons of time, tons of money by doing previs. Previs is really, really graduating and becoming much, much more common and easier to do. Postvis is taking previs and adding live action to it so that you can get a rough view of what your composited visual effects would look like. TechViz is if you go to a live action shoot and you want to figure out what you're going to do in that live action shoot, it's sort of previs for your live action shoot is one way of looking at it. Figure out whether, if you're in this room, you can simulate being in this room. If you want to do a crane shot, will the crane even fit in the room? It's that kind of conversation. So again, it can save you tons of time, money, and sanity as well, which is well worth it. And then ICVFX, whether it's LED volumes or traditional chroma keying using green screen or blue screen, or brown screen in the case of June, or maybe no screen in the future where we use machine learning to cut things out and we don't have a green screen at all. But in-camera visual effects, trying to get our film in the can on set, not have to do as much post, or any post maybe. So I want to talk for a minute about why use virtual production, because I think that's something which comes up, especially with a lot of producers and production professionals when they're used to doing things a certain way, and now we're talking about tearing up the rule book and doing it in a new way. And that causes a lot of uncertainty and fear in people because they know how they used to do it. Now they're being asked to do it in this new way. And this, to start by saying, not everything needs to be done in virtual production. And I think it's important to be realistic and be real about that. But the things that can be done in virtual production, there's huge advantages to it. So I want to talk about what kind of problems does virtual production solve. I'll describe a few of them just to give some examples of when virtual production is a good thing. So any of you that have done live action shoots where you've had to travel to another part of the planet and take a whole team with you, you'll know that it's expensive and complicated and expensive. So with this, in theory, you can go anywhere on the planet, project that onto the wall, and you can be anywhere. So you can, in theory, save yourself money. I will start by saying that virtual production shouldn't be considered as a way to save money, because it doesn't necessarily. It can, but it shouldn't be the reason that you use it. You should use it because you know it's a good idea. But it is a way to save money. It is a way to avoid having to go to different locations. Being able to project video or 3D real-time backgrounds from anywhere on the planet onto these surfaces means you can shoot anywhere, in theory. And it's just getting to that point where people are scanning things, a very high fidelity, reactive backgrounds are starting to appear. Another great use case for it is like the Jungle Book, Lion King examples, figuring out what you're going to shoot or what you're going to make in visual effects is really difficult. And if you figure it out at the end of the process by doing it and making a visual effects shot, you spend all the money to figure out whether it's good or not. So doing a rough version first is huge advantages to doing that. And things like Unreal Engine are starting to make that much easier, much more accessible. You know, anybody can pick up Unreal Engine and make a previs of their own film that they're going to make. I see this all the time running the school. We have tons of film professionals come through the school. Their background has no computer graphics in it at all. Their background is traditional live action filmmaking, and they pick up Unreal Engine and they figure out how they're going to do their shoot. And they do it themselves. They don't hire a team. One of our students who's just finished working on George Miller, the Mad Max, the next Mad Max movie, he was a director that came to us and learned Unreal, and halfway through the course, he hadn't even finished the course, but he did a pitch in Unreal to an agency, won the job, and that just proves that somebody with no background in it can start using it for their own previs, which is that was never possible before. You'd have to hire a company to do it, and it's still something to learn for sure. But I see all the time production professionals pick this up and use it to help their process. Reshoots are often expensive. You can scan the set that you're in while you're there doing the shoot, and then bring it back with you, and then do a reshoot in the volume. Or another one here being that, as I said before, previs was something that you would do at sort of someone's desk. Like I'd be sat there at my desk with Maya or something, making something, showing a director, maybe if he came in, or more likely taking a screen grab of it and sending it to them through a producer, and then getting some notes, and then trying to interpret those notes and probably getting them wrong, and then a whole bunch of loops of that. Whereas on the Lion King example, we were all in the same room. We were all doing it together in real time. There was somebody there moving a tree in real time in front of the DP's camera or virtual camera. So it just makes figuring it out a lot easier. So some real use cases for where virtual production can be super useful. Insert shots, like you figure out another shot you want to do, or you don't have to do all your shots on set in the expensive way. You can do them in a more closed environment. If you've got one of these things you have access to, then there's all sorts of different types of insert shots, but sometimes you can make use of this rather than having to go back to a set or spin up a whole film set to capture something. If you have talent that costs a lot and you've got a virtual production volume, say we're in LA or Bangkok, and there's somebody who lives here, but you're trying to tell them, okay, we're going to go to Switzerland, we're going to fly all the way around the world, you're going to have to be there for a month, and they're expensive, so that's one thing, but they're also, maybe they will just say, no, I don't want to go all the way around the world for a month. You could bring them in here for a day and capture in a day what would maybe take you a month to go and do on a real location. So yeah, there's more, but I will park that one there. There's also times where using virtual production is not necessarily the best way to do it. I used to get in trouble when I was working in visual effects in London by my producers, because the clients would come in, we'd have meetings, and they would say, this is what we want to do, and we were trying to figure out how much it was going to cost or how complex it was to make it in computer graphics. And I would often say, why don't you just shoot it? Just shoot it. You could shoot that if they were saying, well, I want a person running through a field and they're going to do this, that, and the other and catch on fire. And like, you could do that for real. You could shoot it for real. It's not necessary to always do it in virtual production. And in fact, it can hurt the production team if you try and do everything in a virtual production volume where it's not necessary. You can add a lot of pressure to a production by trying something that maybe doesn't work and people maybe don't want to do it again. So you've got to approach it with caution and try things in bite-sized pieces. Try it first and experiment with it. Another example would be things that are very expensive to make in CG. Whether it's on a wall or inside a computer, if it's very costly or complex to make in CG, then you could do it for real. Just do it for real. Shooting for real is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it. People should keep doing it. Technical hurdles, maybe you've got something that's like water and fire and hair and all those things were really hard in visual effects, and people figured out how to do them. But now we're going through those same processes again in real time, trying to figure them out again and make them run in real time. So if it's too hard, too expensive, you could just go do it for real. Go do it for real. I want to take a second to talk about roles and skills. So, because people are always curious about what does it take to put this together. These kinds of people are attracted to virtual production. Most common groups of people we get at the school anyway. Production professionals, visual effects professionals, and games professionals. So they bring a lot of things with them. The production professionals know production. They know filmmaking, they know how shots work, and they know how that whole mechanism works. Visual effects professionals know computer graphics. They know CG and how computer graphics works. And then games people know CG. They don't necessarily, so on the slide here you can see the things they know, things they don't know, right? So production professionals know filmmaking, they don't necessarily know CG, they don't necessarily know real time. None of these people know, we're assuming none of these people know virtual production yet. Visual effects professionals know CG, most often they know photoreal CG, but they don't necessarily know filmmaking because they've got a shot at the end of its life. They weren't there when it was born. They weren't going through that whole creative process of filmmaking. So they know the CG part though. And then they probably don't know real-time CG because they're used to making very not real-time CG, like I have, where you have to wait for a week for your render to come back to see what it looks like. It's like getting photos developed. Games artists know real-time and CG. They know how to make it run fast, but they don't, because they've had to squash it into low-powered systems for so long, they don't necessarily know the high-fidelity approach. They don't necessarily know what visual effects artists know in terms of pushing photoreal CG. So all these people lack something, but the other people know it. So this is really all of us coming together to work together and share our knowledge that we haven't done before. And this makes it really fun. That's what made it really fun for me. I've been a CG supervisor and a visual effects supervisor, and those kinds of people go on set. But most of the rest of visual effects people, they don't go on set. They stay in a room. It's a bit like this, but just full of desks, and we don't go on set. But this is actually allowing people to get together and have fun, play in real time, and go on set. This big, horrible diagram here is attempting to describe how production goes. Take a picture of it. I'm not going to talk through the whole thing, but beginning at the top is an idea, and a production company forms around that idea, and then we jump straight into hiring production people and visual effects and post services. There's sound and editorial and all of those things that get involved early. The art department, making concept art, trying to figure out what this thing looks like, building scripts. All those pre-production activities happen at the beginning. And then on the left, you'll see some of the traditional production pursuits, things like being a DP, a gaffer. Those things have existed forever. There's a new concept where we have a virtual gaffer, which is someone who's focused on lighting, but in a virtual world, as opposed to the real world, using these lights that we can see around us. The dotted bubbles here are the sort of new, I guess, supervisors, the new high-level creatives that are involved. So we've got the virtual art department, which really is should be part of the art department. Sometimes it's not. You've got a visual effects supervisor. That's a very old, old-ish term. A VP supervisor is a very new one. So a VP supervisor should essentially know what the visual effects supervisor knows, and how virtual production works, and how film works. So they really have to know a lot of things to be able to understand the process that films go through to be made, CG and how it's made, and then virtual production, how real-time CG is made and shot. Then the two sort of big groups at the bottom, we've got the stage operations. The brain bar is a term which everybody knows but doesn't like. But a bunch of technical people essentially making these volumes work. And then the virtual art department, that's where I've spent a lot of my time. Like on The Lion King, I was leading the virtual art department, a group of pirates, a group of artists making virtual worlds and building the virtual world of The Lion King. Then you have a VAD supervisor, which was I started as a lead, ended up becoming that essentially as the VAD supervisor left to go to post. You have a group of artists making virtual worlds. And then there's all the tracking stuff. So you've got tracking, whether you're tracking mocap and tracking characters, or if you're tracking a camera. And you can use the same system to track both. Or sometimes you'll have cameras, like we had one in here yesterday with a MOSIS tracker on it that doesn't have any other equipment. It's just a thing that's stuck to the top of a camera to figure out where that camera is in real space. So a lot of people there. A question that gets asked a lot is, should everybody learn Unreal Engine? Unreal Engine, for anyone who doesn't know it, is a 3D game engine that was used to make computer games that now makes films. And it's quite new to doing that, so it's still very much a game engine. But think of it as the 3D operating system of virtual production, if you like. It's where you can build worlds, render them, push them onto the wall here, and be able to move cameras around and navigate through the world. With a video, you put a video like rear projection was onto the screen there. It can't move. You move left and right and it just breaks and it doesn't look right. But with a real-time 3D background, which is now becoming like the Matrix City example there, becoming very high fidelity, very photoreal, very capable of looking like reality. We're at that point now where it's just about there. But should everyone learn it? Because isn't it just for the artists or the technical operators that need to learn it? My philosophy is no, I think everybody should learn it, and there's several reasons for that. I believe that all the production professionals can benefit from knowing it, using it in their own process and augmenting their own process, making their work more efficient, faster, being able to see it themselves without needing to hire a team. There's tons of examples of this appearing. It also empowers you in this environment. If you're a film professional but you're not on the box, but you're at the back there and you're trying to talk to your VAD team or your operation team, and you need to have the right conversation with them. If you don't know what that black box is that's making all the cool imagery come out, you'll have a less good conversation with them than if you had some knowledge about it. So it's very empowering to learn it a bit. You don't have to learn it in depth, but learning it a bit is hugely empowering for people. And you just know the language. You can have a conversation with your VAD team, your operation team, that makes them feel like you actually know that you care. It makes them feel like you care about what they're doing, that you understand it, you have tolerance for when it goes wrong. So yeah, it makes there be less fear in all of this. It makes there be more collaboration. It's just a positive thing all around. And some of the people, like one of our instructors, Wolfie, Eric Wolford, it really pushed himself in this direction. He's not a CG guy, he's a DP. But he went through the Epic Fellowships and learned and did some trainings with us, and now he's an instructor with us. He's done so much of that. He's not on the box, but the conversations that he can have because he's learned about the engine are just so high quality that he's now like one of the go-to people in Hollywood because he just understands it. VFX people, if you're making a transition into virtual production, sure, you should learn it. I think it's super fun, and I would learn it anyway because I've just seen it breathe life into kind of, people have been in visual effects for a long time, they can get a little bit over it, and this is now just changing everything. Change is hard, but it makes it fun, it makes it exciting, it breathes passion back into people's careers, and that's a good thing. Games artists who are going into Unreal for games should learn it, obviously, but some of them want to transition and work in movies. You know, sometimes they want to go do that. They want to make a career change. Other things that people should learn, production professionals should, basically all of this is the things that those people lacked. So they should learn, production professionals should learn about Unreal, yes, CG, virtual production, all the things they didn't know, how to shoot on LED walls, how to light, if you put lights near an LED wall, the light spills onto the wall, you can see it. You know, you have to learn how to light in this space here in front of the wall. So you've got to plug the gaps here. Visual effects professionals, they don't know virtual production, they don't know real-time CG, they don't know the filmmaking process a lot of the time because they got a shot at the end of its life. They didn't see that process happening. They haven't been on set maybe. They should go learn how that comes together because you need to with virtual production. You didn't with visual effects, but you kind of do with virtual production. Games artists need to plug the gap often with photoreal CG, understanding the filmmaking process and understanding virtual production. So everybody's got stuff to learn. Nobody that came to virtual production. When we were working on Lion King, there was no virtual production artists. They didn't exist. We were borrowing from games and visual effects and production in some cases. There were no, and it's still similar. We're still borrowing from those pools and training, upskilling people to work on these projects. Other things that I believe people need to learn in virtual production, there's a whole bunch of soft skill stuff. You know, I've said a bunch of it already, so I will try not to repeat myself. But this stuff is difficult, it's different, and it's new. And when something is like that, it breaks. You know, anyone who's done it will know that that's how it works. Is it breaks. It doesn't mean it's bad. It just does, you know, and being tolerant with that and understanding that you need to factor that into your production. You need to make sure that you've got people around you who understand it. Be patient with it. Be curious about it. No, none of this is anything to do with tech, but all the things that you can culture yourself with to be more comfortable in this environment. It's a challenging environment. It's one of the most fun environments I've had the privilege of being in for my whole professional life, including software, visual effects, and running businesses. It's so much fun, but it's part of the reason why it's fun and why some of those people in visual effects got a little bit over visual effects is because a lot of it was figured out. And all of this is still being figured out. And that makes it fun. It's not a bad thing. Just be patient with it. Nobody likes it when something breaks, but if you know it's going to, and nobody likes change too. You know, this is a change. We're asking people to change how they do what they do. Change is something that we biologically resist, and that's never going to probably change. But being okay with change, being curious about it, being excited by it, that is a great thing that you can do yourself that has nothing to do, you don't need to go learn it in a school, you just got to go, okay, well, this seems interesting and I'm going to be all right with it as I get it wrong. Everybody's in that boat doing this. Nobody's figured it out yet. Some people have figured it out a bit. That's about as far as it is. Figuring out where you fit in. What do you love doing? Try everything. Experiment. Figure it out. That's the only way you can do that. You can't know what you want to do in life without trying it. There is no way. Philosophically, you can't figure out what you want to do. So just jump in, have a go. This stage exists now. I'm sure you could figure out how to get some experience in it and figure it out. And as this says, have fun. Have fun with it. This should be fun. There's plenty of other things you can do for a living. I know you're all probably somewhere in the film world, I imagine. Actually, can I get a quick show of hands? How many people here have worked in virtual production before? So just a few people, one or two. I know one of them. Has anybody used Unreal Engine? Again, just a few, same people. Who's in production? Who works in production in some capacity? Film, TV, cameras, a lot of the rest of you. So who's curious about virtual production? A lot of people, yeah. So just bear these things in mind as you get curious. Try and find where it's being done. Even volunteer for it. You know, I still, even after 2 or 3 careers, will still do things for free, and just because I want to learn about them. There's nothing wrong with that. So and as it says, well, it doesn't say, but the picture there is because I believe this is not going away, and we are asking people to change and do something differently. I believe that if you don't, then, and you believe that things are going to be done the old way, they still will get done the old way. But embracing the change, embracing the transition to digital cameras, embracing the transition to digital visual effects, every one of those transitions was resisted, and this one is being resisted too, and all the machine learning stuff is being resisted. This is a natural part of being human. The best antidote to that is to learn about it. Just learn about it. You might not like it, but that's okay. You know, maybe you'll try it and love it and fall in love with it. Just give it a go. I know we started a few minutes in. Are we going to go over by how much time do I have left? Can anyone tell me? I'm going to keep going for a few more minutes because I know that I started late. So hopefully that's okay. Tell me to stop if you need me to. But so the content creation pipeline, the virtual art department, here again is a diagram. Feel free to take a picture of it. The idea here again is that we've got a story, a script, something, just an idea. That first bubble at the top is an idea. We start building a script, we start building storyboards, all the things you guys know about already. The middle part here is where virtual content comes in. We feed the art department the idea. They start making imagery and defining the idea in visual terms. Then the virtual art department gets involved. The virtual art department's job is to take that idea, build a virtual world that looks like it as perfectly as possible, and make it run fast and make it run in real time so that it will play on a wall like this. Maybe there's animation that goes together with that, but all of that bundles into something we call a master scene. The next part is to do a scout in that scene. So we'll take a look at the scene, and we'll talk about that in a second visually, so it'll make probably more sense. But we check it, basically. We take a look at it. Scout is just having a look. Same as a location scout out in the real world. A location scout in a virtual world is exactly the same thing. I'm trying to figure out, does this tell the story or not yet? Keep going through that process, cycling backwards and forwards with the art director and the production designer, figuring out, does this thing tell our story? And once you've got it signed off, then we're ready to shoot. And then it goes through to the green bubble where we're doing the live shoot, if you like. Doesn't have to be live action, but it can be. There is still post-production. This doesn't get rid of post-production. Every shot that gets shot on one of these goes through something. Maybe it's just coloring, maybe it's a little bit of comp, taking some of the CG edges off things. But post still happens, and then once all of that's done, we feed it all back into editorial again. We just start replacing those early images in editorial with the final images. Same way that it's been done for a long time, but now doing it with virtual shoots. Talking about the scout, don't have to read all the words there, but feel free to snap the slide if you want and read it later. What this is showing is basically a multi-user session. So what that is, we build these worlds in Unreal Engine. That means that in the old way of doing things, we would have to get somebody to look at that one computer and figure out whether it's good or not. But we can now connect Unreal Engines together and have artists all over the world actually working in the same space, on the same art, at the same time. Multi-user session was a thing that the engineers on Lion King invented as a multiplayer game, basically. It allows people into a game that's the movie you're making. And it allows you to look at it before you shoot on it and figure out together, does it look right? And you'd be anywhere on the planet doing this in real time. We did a shoot where we had people in Argentina, New York, Japan, all in the same Unreal Engine. It was actually running in the cloud. The virtual machines the artists were working on were in the cloud, and the wall was being driven by them. So all these machines all around the world were, somebody would move a tree in Japan, and, okay, thank you very much. Move a tree in Japan and it would move on the wall here. So it just goes to show how you can have all these people be anywhere, be at home, but the director could be at home, which was great during the pandemic because everyone had to be at home. And that's actually a good part of the reason why a lot of this stuff was pushed so hard, so fast. So being in the VAD during one of these sessions, your job is to essentially make the world look nice and make the production designer happy so that the production designer's happy with the way it's laid out. The director of photography's in there to make sure that where they put their cameras works. And the director's there just with oversight, looking at the storytelling, making sure that all of those people who are focused on their one thing, all of it's coming together to tell a story. And on that, as cool as this technology is, I love it. This is all about storytelling. This is all about people's expressing what's in their hearts, and computers don't do that, people do that. So fall in love with the technology, but please don't forget the story. Don't forget that we're humans and we're artists and we're trying to tell stories. I am a massive nerd and I love computers, as you can see, and I love making imagery in computers. But the real reason for doing it is to create feelings in people, to create emotion in people. And if you focus too much on just on the tech, that can get in the way of that. So just temper it with having people who aren't caring about the technology and they're caring about the story, because it's why we do this. So stage operations, the volume control, I'll call it. Everyone's trying to stop calling it the other name. But stage operations, we've got a big list of things there. I'm not going to read all of it, but there's basically stuff to do with cameras. You're trying to track where that camera is in this space here so that you can match it together with the virtual camera, which is an old visual effects principle. It's just we're doing it in real time now and having these two things locked together and be able to shoot your live action and your CG at the same time. So they need to lock together. We're tracking what the lens is telling us, the lens encoding. We're dealing with content delivery, so you've got basically video and 3D. If you're dealing with 3D, most likely you're using Unreal. Someone tell me if they're not. I'd love to hear about it. But most people are using Unreal Engine. You need the right hardware, obviously, to make that work. Driving these walls, you do need the right hardware. But if you're playing video, it's a bit less complicated, so I'm not going to dwell on that side of it. You also have the 3D control. You have boxes at the back of the room and behind the wall, usually, which are pushing the pixels onto the wall and dealing with getting imagery out of Unreal and onto the wall. You have the wall itself. You've got panels stuck together. This all comes from the world of live events that's been doing this forever. But now the panels are getting to the point where they are higher fidelity, they're more resolution, they're better color representation, things that people didn't care so much about before. Now they really do, because the scrutiny of filmmaking is much higher than people at a concert. You have panels, you have a processor driving it, that's taking the imagery out of the computer and making it display on all these panels. And then you've got various things just making sure everything's synchronized, like Genlock and timecode. The simplest it could be is a machine and a processor and a wall, but there's situations where you can have racks full of equipment as well. So it just depends how big the wall is, how much money you got, all that kind of thing. It uses in Unreal a system called NDisplay. There are other things that can map the panel positions to video output. Thank you. But NDisplay within Unreal, you see we've got Disguise here as well. They also do it. Within Unreal, you can also, using NDisplay, you can previs what your shoot's going to look like. So you can actually figure out how this is going to look in Unreal at home before you get here and start spending all the money it takes to run one of these. There's a whole list there of virtual camera technology. I won't list it again, partly because I'm running out of time here, but also take a picture and read it at your leisure. Simulcam is like Jungle Book, where we had a tracker on a real camera, and we're trying to figure out the position of that camera relative to the real camera and the CG camera. There's all kinds of homegrown versions. Anyone's got an iPad, download Unreal and get the iPad and connect it together and experience the joy of moving an iPad around and steering a camera around in Unreal. That's one of my favorite moments in any of our classes, is just watching someone go, whoa, that's so cool. It is very cool, so check it out. There's Vive, there's moving up sort of cost-wise and complexity into using MoSys and Vanishing Point and Stipe and mocap volumes. You can spend hundreds of thousands on tracking solutions, or go back to the iPad, which is hundreds of dollars. Big scary diagram again. This one just breaks down the stage technical operations a little bit more, getting into some of the roles within the brain bar, if you must call it that, but volume control or whatever else you want to call it. Lots of different roles. It tends towards the more technical end of the spectrum. If you're more artistic, you might tend towards the virtual art department. If you're more technical, you might end up in volume control. But there's all kinds of people, from stage managers, people loading scenes in, making sure that the VAD stuff is loaded and it's running, and dealing with it if it's not running fast enough, and pressing record when you need to do the shoot. I know I've got like a couple of minutes left, so personnel-wise, I'll just say try and find people who've done it before. That's the easiest way to say this. Yeah, I'm gonna leave that with try and either go learn how it's done or work with people who've done it already. This goes through, if you want to take a picture, go ahead. This goes through the A version of how you might start with scouting, doing pre-light, doing tech prep, and then doing the shoot. Training, I've got like 1 minute left. I run a school, we teach virtual production. I would love us to run the video if we can. Enjoy this. This is a little bit about CG Pro and who we are and what we do. So there's a quick video about CG Pro. We are Unreal Authorized Training Center. We became one of the top ones in the world. Super proud of that, and I love doing this. I love teaching. I love what this is doing to the industry, all the industries that it's affecting. I'm going to fly past this slide. Just basically saying, grow your skills, grow your network, and find people who like this stuff. CG Pro info is on the website, so there's a list of things that we do. We've trained all kinds of cool folks. We're training CNN right now and NASA last year, and maybe they're just like, get off stage. We've killed your slides. Okay, it's back. Yeah, as I said, we've trained all kinds of. I personally got to train NASA. That was another childhood dream I didn't even know I had. But there's so many uses for this. It's so much fun. It's birthing new forms of media, like my friend Haz, who's working on a game and a movie and an experience in Unreal Editor for Fortnite all at the same time. It's an incredible thing to be able to used to make a film and then make a whole brand new game that were nothing to do with each other. Now people are actually out there making all of these things together in the same breath. So how to keep in touch? If you want to keep in touch with me, you're very welcome to. I'll be here if you want to come have a chat. I probably run out of time for questions, but feel free to come talk to me. You can email me. Check out the website, becomecgpro.com. There's my LinkedIn. There's our free Facebook group if you want to come and get involved. That's one of the easiest ways to do it. That's my QR code for my LinkedIn. So I would say questions, but I think that they want me to get off stage, which is fair because I think I've gone over. But I will say thank you very much for listening. Captain Crap. And I hope to see you all again soon. Come say hi. Thank you, guys.